The U.S. is now $37 trillion in debt and growing. The reason is because every year the federal government spends more than it collects in taxes and has to borrow money to make up the difference. So why are we cutting taxes? We're going to delve into that very question. Later, we'll present our POC Top 3, along with some news you can't use. All that is coming up in this episode of The Physics of Civics.
When consumers purchase more goods, plants use more of their capacity. Men are hired instead of laid off. Investment increases and profits are high. Corporate tax rates must also be cut to increase incentives and the availability of investment capital. An economy hampered by restrictive tax rates will never produce enough revenues to balance our budget, just as it will never produce enough jobs or enough profits. In short, it is a paradoxical truth that tax rates are too high today and tax revenues are too low. And the soundest way to raise the revenues in the long run is to cut the rates now.
Listen, I got a question for you.
Uh-oh.
Kind of a quiz here.
Oh, good.
So according to most scientific research, what percentage of our brains do we humans actually use?
Ooh. Well, I've always heard that it's 10%. Is that right? I don't know.
Well, that's typically what people say.
Yeah.
Right?
You hear that all the time.
But it ain't true. Scientists have known for decades that it's not true. The fact is that we are using all parts of our brain are more or less active even when we're at rest. So it's pretty much all of it. We've known that since the advent of, MRIs and PET scans and all that. Point is, people still think that it's 10%.
President Joe Biden might be a little less.
So maybe, I've known people who are only using 10%. The point is that these misconceptions are sometimes very hard to let go of. We've got a couple of misconceptions related to taxes that we're going to put to rest. You may recall that during the last spring, the negotiations over the One Big Beautiful Bill, there were two recurring complaints that we heard pretty much incessantly. From the right, the complaint was that the bill didn't cut spending enough to, quote unquote, pay for the tax cuts, right? From the left, we heard that the bill would slash Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security.
Sick of hearing it.
To give the tax cuts to the rich, right?
Right.
These are the same two talking points we've been hearing pretty much every time Congress considers a tax bill. And I don't mean similar.
Yeah,
I mean the exact same.
Verbatim.
Word for word, deficit hawks insisting on, quote, paying for tax cuts, and demagogues on the left warning about, quote, tax cuts for the rich. We've been hearing this rhetoric at least since the Reagan administration, maybe longer. I swear, if I heard it again, I could dance to it. That happens. Both of these talking points are pure nonsense. Moreover, what they reveal, in my view, is a fundamental lack of understanding on the left and on the right about the nature of taxation, about the difference between tax rates and tax revenues, and about the relationship between the two. What we're going to try to do in this episode is explain just how taxes work within U.S. fiscal policy, and in the process refute both of these complaints. That part should be fairly easy. I'll begin with some historical facts and follow with an illustration. First, the facts. And these are all based on government statistics, all fairly easy to look up and verify if one is inclined. Over the last 100 years, there have been 5 instances in which Congress passed and the president signed across-the-board cuts in marginal income tax rates. Okay, so that's 5 major tax cuts signed into law. It happened in the 1920s under Calvin Coolidge, in the 1960s under John F. Kennedy, in the 1980s under Ronald Reagan, in the early 2000s under Bush 43, and most recently in 2017 under Trump 45. In all 5 cases, the same 3 economic developments ensued. First, a period of sustained and robust economic growth followed the tax cuts and continued for several years afterward. Second, federal revenues increased significantly over the prior year, and that also continued for several years subsequent. And third, the top income earners ended up paying more in taxes than before, both in total dollar amounts and as a percentage of the total tax burden. Now, these are facts, and they're not in dispute. Please look them up.
Contrary to popular belief, common sense is not dead. It's alive and well right here on the Physics of Civics. Be sure to subscribe, like, share, and comment.
This episode of the Physics of Civics is brought to you by Savage Soaps. Cleanse, nourish, and revitalize your skin with luxurious handcrafted soaps for men and women, all made right here in the USA with sustainable, locally sourced ingredients. Shop SavageSoaps.com for soaps, body butter, salt scrubs, and other skin-loving products. Get wet with Savage Soaps.
Kind of important, I think, to point out that we didn't even have a federal income tax till the 16th Amendment. It's 1913. I mean,
1913, right.
We did have a temporary tax in 1861 to pay for the war, the Civil War. That was repealed in 1872, so that only existed for 11 years. It wasn't until 1930. So we've only had federal income taxes for a little over 100 years.
Yeah, right.
The question that came to mind when you were talking a minute ago, what about capital gains tax cuts, in the late 90s? Same deal? Or?
Well, yes, I think you could include that one too. Capital gains cut. Now, very quickly, capital gains refers to the profit or loss that one realizes when selling an investment asset.
Right.
That money is taxed once as a capital gain and then again as income. So they're essentially double taxing the same profits. So the capital gains tax cut was passed by a Republican Congress and signed by Democratic President Bill Clinton. Frankly, I don't think there's really any question that the capital gains tax cut unleashed an economic boom in the late 90s that really launched the internet age, financed it, or that it led to the first balanced budget in nearly 30 years. That's a fact.
Yep.
So yeah, it's that one is often overlooked. I don't think you can overestimate its impact at all.
You point out the unfairness of the capital gains tax in so many ways, taxing income as well as the increase in the value of the asset. But you've got progressive Democrats who were floating the idea in the last election and previously about taxing unrealized gains. And for those who don't know what that is, so if you buy your house for $100,000, and the tax assessment on it now is say $200,000,
right?
Some of these Democrats, including President Biden, Kamala Harris, of course, Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, they want to tax that increase in value before you sell the house. Just what's on paper.
It's just on paper. It's not a real. The money isn't even real. That's what they say when you've realized the gain. You've made it real by actually
selling,
exchanging it for money.
Right, and they call it paper profits. That's what they call it.
Paper profits.
So you're showing an increase in the value of your asset that you have to pay a capital gains on, and you haven't sold it. So how you get the money to pay for it and you haven't sold the house?
I don't think anyone's ever going to pass that. That's got to be maybe the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Or I don't know. It's hard to say. There's been pretty dumb things.
I don't know if it's the dumbest. A lot of these progressive politicians come up with some pretty dumb shit.
It's right up there with defund the police. It's dumb.
Well, the whole thing that you just explained, it seems counterintuitive. That there's actually more money coming into the government with lower taxes. So you're saying tax cuts didn't slow the economy, which is what Democrats would tell us?
That's what I'm saying. They boosted it.
Wow. So that the tax revenues did not decrease, they actually increased.
Yes, they did. And that happened every time. More money coming into the government than before. And
we hear constantly how the rich don't pay enough, right? Unless you have
rich got to pay their fair share.
Unless you're a politician, you have ways to skirt it.
Yeah.
What you're saying is, the rich didn't pay less tax.
No, they paid more, and it happened every single time. Seriously, folks, you got to let that sink in. I mean, replay this section as needed. This is very important to understand. And here's another thing about the fair share. Ask somebody what they think the fair share should be for the rich. The fact of the matter is, the richest 2% of income earners in America pay more than 50% of all the taxes.
Wow. Yeah, let that one sink in.
And conversely, the bottom 50% pay less than 2% of all the taxes.
So the middle class is getting screwed.
The middle class is getting, the rich are getting screwed, except for they're rich, they can afford it.
Yeah, right.
But the middle class is getting squeezed.
How did all that happen? Explain that.
Well, it's pretty logical. Here's an illustration. Suppose you've got, and we'll use round numbers so it's easy to figure. Suppose you've got 10 individual income earners, each one earning, say, $100,000 per year. Now, if their tax rate, the percentage of their income they pay the government, is 10%, how much will the tax revenues, that is the total amount collected by the government, add up to for all 10 of them combined? It's pretty easy to figure that 10% of $100,000 is $10,000.
Right.
That's the taxes they each pay. Multiplied by 10 individuals equals $100,000 in total revenues. If we raise that rate to 20%, now each of them is paying $20,000 for a total of $200,000 in revenues. And of course, if we lower their tax rate to 0, obviously 0% of anything is 0, so they're not getting anything.
Right.
Right.
With you so far.
What happens if we raise the tax rate to 100%? How much more revenue will that produce? Well, if we go strictly by the numbers, that comes to $1 million.
Right.
But of course, we're not just talking about numbers. We're talking about people. And people tend to change their behavior when their circumstances change. Odd little habit we humans have. And if every dollar they make goes to pay taxes, where's their incentive to have a job and earn an income?
I wouldn't work if I'm not getting any.
Answer, there is none.
Right.
They'd be better off quitting their jobs and going on government assistance, quite honestly. And you can't force them to work for no money because that's slavery, and slavery is, as far as I know, still illegal.
Let's hope.
More likely, they'll find other non-taxable ways to make money. Either way, the government's not getting anything from it.
So there are now two tax rates that will yield 0 in tax revenues, right? 0%
Right.
and 100%.
That's exactly right. And it stands to reason, therefore, that somewhere between 0 and 100% is a point at which increasing the rate will no longer yield an increase in revenue, and beyond which will yield a decrease in revenue. I mean, picture a bell curve on a graph. You've all seen these bell curves from right to left, or from left to right, rather.
Mm-hmm.
As the rate goes up, revenues go up. But then as we move past the top of the curve, as the rates go up, the revenues start to come down. Now, ask an economist, or pretty much anyone who's ever taken Econ 101 in college, this is called the point of diminishing returns. And those who know their fiscal policy also recognize this particular curve as the Laffer curve, named after the economist Arthur Laffer, back in the 80s. But well before that, well before Laffer, John F. Kennedy understood how taxes affect economic activity and federal revenues. Now, the clip you heard at the beginning was from a speech that Kennedy gave at the Economic Club of New York back in 1962, where he said, quote, and this is right from the clip, "The soundest way to raise the revenues in the long run is to cut the rates now." Now, this is about the most concise and ringing endorsement of supply-side economics you'll ever hear. And of course, Kennedy was a Democrat.
Yeah, you won't hear that from them today, that's for sure.
Not at all.
So how does this actually, translate into more tax revenues?
Well, when tax rates are above and beyond that top of the curve, the point of diminishing returns, and they usually are, reducing the rates will increase the returns. That's exactly what Kennedy and the other presidents enacted, and that's what came to pass. Now, we're both old enough, Jay, to remember when the top income tax bracket was 71% under Jimmy Carter.
Right.
It was ridiculous. And it's no wonder the economy stagnated all those years.
Oh, exactly.
I mean, and we also remember how the Reagan tax cuts turned it around. I think the best way to think about it is that as you increase the economy, as the economy grows, you increase the size of the pie, so to speak, you also increase the size of each slice. So a growing economy can deliver a larger slice to the government, even at a lower rate.
Sure.
This is not just theory, Jay. This is really how our free market economy works in practice.
And why it works so well.
Exactly. And so the idea that these GOP deficit hawks are pushing that we need to pay for tax cuts is just wrong. Tax cuts are a net revenue producer. Tax cuts pay for themselves. Incidentally, what works for the macro scale also works for individuals. So when we talk about the rich, for example, we're largely talking about the entrepreneurial and investor classes, right?
Right.
I mean, the only way to make any real money in this life, the only legit way that is to put your money to work for you, one way or another. So it's really the entrepreneurs and investors who become billionaires after all. And since they're spending and investing in much larger proportions than all of the rest of us,
yeah.
Even at a lower rate, their share of the tax burden that they're covering increases even faster. Why? Because they're rich.
Right. Exactly.
So this idea that we're giving tax cuts to the rich is absurd. First of all, no one's given them anything. They're just keeping more of what they've earned. And when they earn more, guess what? They produce more. They hire more. They donate more. I mean, look at how charitable giving exploded in the late 80s.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and they pay the government more. And so do the people they hire. And so do the people who do business with them, and on and on and on. You get the idea.
Right.
You don't get more money out of the rich by raising taxes. You get more money by cutting taxes. And again, we have a century of experience that bears that out.
Every single time.
Every time.
To play devil's advocate, that doesn't mean we shouldn't cut spending, right? I mean, we should still do that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, obviously, even if, and this is what happened during the Reagan administration, and it happens all the time, actually. It always happened. Even if revenues grow by 20%, if the spending grows by like 25%,
you're still in the hole.
We're still in the hole.
Yeah.
Exactly right. And that's what always happens. But the revenue side is not the problem here. We don't need to cut spending to pay for tax cuts. What we need to do is stop spending money we don't have to pay for programs that don't work for people who don't need them.
Yep.
And we need to get it all under control pronto before we get so deep into debt that the interest on it consumes our entire budget. And that's where we're headed.
Yeah.
And we will no longer be able to pay for the programs that we do need.
Yes.
You know, and Reagan said it himself. We don't have a deficit because the American people are being taxed too little. We have a deficit because Congress spends too much.
On the left, they're screaming about cuts to Medicare and cuts to Medicaid and Social Security and so on and so forth. You know, and
there's no such thing.
Yeah, that's not what they're even proposing.
Nobody has proposed
There's
that.
so much waste and so much fraud in those programs. They're saying, you know, prove. I think it's reasonable to say if you and I are paying for these programs, which we're happy to do, there should always be some kind of a net to catch those that need help. But the point they're making and what this bill tries to do is weed out the fraud. I've seen reports on the percentages of fraud within Medicare, Medicaid, and even Social Security. And it
makes you sick.
It's unbelievable. Hundreds of billions of dollars that are going to people who don't need it.
And powerful people in the government are using that for their own personal piggy banks.
Absolutely.
They're just plundering it. We see it over and over. And the fact of the matter is that if we don't do that, those Medicare and Social Security aren't going to be around.
Yeah. And you and I are at the age where we're ready to start collecting Social Security. So it's really important that it stays fiscally sound to us.
But in all the years that you and I have been watching the news and following politics, and including those years when the Republicans were in charge of the White House and the Senate and the House, how many times have you heard anybody propose cutting Social Security or cutting Medicare?
Never.
Never.
That's not what you'll hear from
when
the left,
Republicans had plenty of opportunity to do that. No one wants to do that. Nobody wants to do that.
It would be political suicide.
And it would be and it would be bad for people.
And that's why the left uses it as a powerful talking point.
As a scare tactic.
If you watch the talking heads on the left on TV, that's all they talk about with this bill is that it's slashing Medicare and it's slashing.
Yeah.
And it's
a lie.
If you read the bill, it's just not the case. They're trying to clean it up. It's about time somebody had the balls to go in and look at these programs and say, look, these are important programs that are going to go by the wayside if we don't fix them. And we know
exactly who that somebody is.
Yeah, we sure do.
Right? Yeah, he who must not be named.
Yeah, that's right. And that's a good thing.
Right. And now there's another aspect to this, Jay. As I mentioned, one of the things that always happens whenever we cut taxes is the economy grows. Why? Well, for just the reason that Kennedy describes in the opening clip. When people and businesses are paying less of their money to the government, they have more money, A, to spend on consumer goods, which also boosts the economy, and B, to invest in things that make even more money. More money in the economy also helps reduce debt, which pushes interest rates down and frees up funds for charitable giving. I mean, it's like a domino effect. You know, it boosts the nonprofit sector, the private sector, the public, all good things.
All boats rise.
Exactly right. The moral of the story is that private citizens and private institutions know how to spend and invest and donate their money much more efficiently and more productively than politicians do. Politicians, after all, aren't making economic decisions. They're making political decisions, right? I mean, that's what politicians do. That's another whole can of worms we'll open up in an upcoming episode, so stay tuned to that. In the meantime, I dare say, and I'm just going to predict this, with the passage of the One Big Beautiful Bill, we got enough things in place now that by this time next year, I expect the country to be experiencing an economic boom, at least as strong as the one in the first Trump term. A growing GDP with low unemployment, low inflation, low interest rates, all of that, and overall higher wages at every income level. Based on what's come before, I think it's pretty easy to predict.
I agree.
And those are good things. So we'll be discussing other aspects of the One Big Beautiful Bill in other episodes, including the deregulation piece and how over-regulation stifles growth and leads to what some call crony capitalism. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of it. Okay, so that brings us to this episode's POC Top 3. And today's topic is Top 3 Favorite TV Themes. Jay and I, we have long memories. So some folks may not recognize any of these, but some of them are still on some of the rerun channels.
All the TV shows in the 60s and 70s and even into the 80s, they all had a theme song. And they don't do that anymore.
Right. And people, for when they do have theme songs, I mean, they get some of the best musicians, some of the best songwriters, producers to do this, and they came up with some pretty zingy stuff.
And the thing is, folks of our age, I can still hum every one of those songs.
Oh, I know most of the words.
It's funny,
because they've been drilled into my head watching them every
All right, buddy, what's your top 3?
All right, number 3, Game of Thrones. That is just a cool...
That is a cool song, yeah.
I don't know, it just kind of really sets the tone for the whole show. Really well produced, very orchestral, and a very recognizable melody. Love the Game of Thrones. Number 2, The Jeffersons.
That's a great
Moving on
song.
up to the east side, baby. I love that one. That is a great one. It's really well done with, I don't know who the singers are, but it's kind of like an old, Southern gospel choir.
Moving on up. That's a great song.
To the east side.
That's very catchy.
And number 1 is The Sopranos.
Oh, yeah. That's a freaky song.
Born under a bad side with a blue moon. Such a cool sound.
Yeah, that is cool. Okay, I got my top 3, but they're all old.
All right.
My number 3 is, and most people listening to this probably won't even remember this show, The Wild Wild West. Remember that show?
Yeah, The Wild Wild West.
What was his name? Conrad. Can't think of his first name.
No.
Was it?
William Conrad was the fat guy.
Cannon.
Michael Conrad? No,
I don't
Michael
remember, but
Michael Conrad was on.
Yeah, that was a great show.
I remember Artemis Gordon.
Artemis Gordon, yeah, and the trains. And anyway, that was a great show, Old West show. And my number 2 is Rockford Files. I love that theme song. There's some great Mike Post. That's the dude's name. Mike Post. He did tons of these songs back then.
Oh, he did Hill Street Blues. He did a whole bunch of those cop shows. Yeah.
Yeah. Lee Sklar played bass on that, and all these big time musicians were on that tune. But that's a really catchy song.
It's one of the first to have a synthesizer.
Yeah, that's right. It had a Moog or something.
Yeah, it had a Moog synthesizer and a harmonica player.
And my number 1 is the old Dick Van Dyke Show.
Da, 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 da,
right.
Da, da. Yeah, that's a good one.
He trips over the ottomans. So anyway, nobody listening to this under the age of 55 is going to remember any of those shows. But look them up, because
look them up. They're good.
I had a CD for a while that was the number 1 or the best TV theme songs. And I just played it in my car once in a while. I'm like, oh my God, I remember that song when I was a kid.
So folks, if you have a top 3 or even top 1 favorite TV theme, drop it in the comments section. We'd love to hear what people think about this.
All right, my friend Phil, how about some news you can't use?
I can't use it, but go ahead.
You're not getting married anytime soon, are you?
Not anytime soon.
Between the two of us, we've done plenty of that, haven't we?
Yeah.
So there's a new website, and it's called Invitin. INVITIN.
Invite. Okay.
It's a French startup, but you can sign up. I think they have it throughout Europe now, and I believe they're in Canada and the US. I'm positive about that.
Okay.
So here's the deal. You go in there like a wedding registry, and you put your info in there for your wedding. Okay. Like, we're getting married at the Scooby-Doo and, open bar, and we're having chicken and filet mignon. And then what you do, bud, is you sell tickets to your wedding. So you online, so you can go.
So it's just anybody,
people you don't know. So think about that for just a minute. Who thinks this is a good idea?
I don't.
I hate weddings. I get an invite in the mail.
You hate weddings? I love weddings.
Oh God, I'll get an invitation from someone I know really well, or a loved one, and they're getting married, and my wife says, "Oh, we're going to a wedding." Oh, geez, really?
I played enough weddings.
God, I've played a million, but yeah, it's crazy. So the prices here range from, it's in euros, but it's about 150 to $300 is average. And that's just to get into the wedding. That doesn't include,
So they imagine that people are going to pay multiple $100s
each
to go to somebody else's wedding that they don't know.
So no, you still got to buy an airplane ticket and a room and buy a suit and, a gift.
And plus, what do they call destination weddings?
Yeah.
They're the rage, they were.
That's part of the thought here, is that, maybe they would have a cool wedding at some really neat place that people always wanted to go. And there's like, let's go to a wedding there. That'd be fun.
Yeah, let's go to a wedding. Do you think you're going to get your money's worth out of this, though?
You wouldn't know anybody. It would be so weird. It's just...
We're going to have to follow up on this story, Jay, and see how it actually pans out.
Yeah, that's just bizarre. Okay, my other story here is out of The Guardian by Ashifa Kassem is her name.
All right.
This one made me laugh. There's this Danish zoo. It has a website, of course, and they just kind of nonchalantly put a post up there that was basically pleading for household pets that they could use for food to feed their wild animals, their cheetahs and their...
To feed the zoo animals.
Yeah, so like you give your puppy, your Great Dane, and they...
okay, that's just wrong.
That's just weird. Of course, the outrage was just, the internet, and...
well, of course.
PETA's up in arms, so... They say here that after a Danish...
Yeah, I have to go along with PETA on this one. You don't usually hear me say that, but I got to stick with them on this.
After a Danish zoo posted a reminder of its long-running program allowing people to donate their healthy, small pets to be gently euthanized and fed to predators, reaction poured in from across the globe. So the zoo was kind of caught off guard. They're like, "Well, we've been doing this."
So the gently euthanized part didn't sway anybody. Didn't ameliorate anybody's fears.
It's not like they throw Fluffy or Kitten into the ring with the lion or anything. They put him to sleep.
And they're not killing him with a great big hammer.
Right. No, supposedly it's gently euthanized.
Gently euthanized.
The zoo said it was simply aiming to mimic the natural food chain by urging those with chickens, rabbits, and guinea pigs that need to be put down to instead hand them over to the zoo. That way, nothing goes to waste, and we ensure that natural behavior, nutrition, and well-being of our predators.
Well, there is a certain logic to it. I have to say, it's not a pleasant thought, but, this is animals we're talking about.
Well, I mean, if you're talking about a guinea pig or a pet mouse or something, who cares?
Like that.
But, dogs and cats and stuff.
People have done a lot worse with gerbils, Lord knows.
You have any experience of that, or are you just throwing it out there? No. Okay. Well, anyway, that's our news you can't use, so don't use it.
All right, don't use it. Well, folks, that's our show. We would love to hear your thoughts and other insights on this. Give us your opinions. Don't forget to like, follow, and share, and make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the episodes. And we will see you back here next time on the Physics of Civics.